Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session about Strategic Networking 101, Researcher Edition. First, let me thank Japanese Science and Technology Agency for inviting me to talk about this special to my heart topic. I'm super thrilled to be here, and I hope by the end of this session, you will be equipped to better deal with people relationship skills. A little bit about myself. So I go with the tagline of neuroscientist turned coach, and this is exactly who I am. My formal background is in neuroscience. I hold a PhD in biomedical sciences from the United States. I did successful postdoc, and I really wanted to be a faculty until I realized that faculty could be quite lonely. And I got into Korean professional development, and I got to love people, and I got to love people skills. I saw a lot of challenges that researchers from different corners of the world face. And that's why I took a position as an academic developer at Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology, or OIST, and I had that position for about 4 years. During that time, I helped researchers, postdocs, faculty, and graduate students to overcome workplace and career challenges. This is where I got interested in coaching and what coaching can do for academia and higher education. At the end, I got a professional coaching certificate from International Coaching Federation, and I founded my company that's called the PhD Whisperer. The mission of this company, it's my personal mission, where I want to help the society and institutions to develop new generation of researchers who are capable of innovation, competing on global stage, and more importantly, have excellent people skills. When I talk about people skills, I had challenges of my own, especially when it came down to interactions and communication. Throughout my life, I was terrified of public speaking engagements. My personality is an introvert. I used to be overwhelmed by groups of people because not only I was an introvert, but also suffered from social anxiety. It was pretty severe. I didn't want to go to poster presentations. I didn't want to present. I didn't want to go to conferences. But over time, when I realized how important those people skills are, and there's nothing scary about public speaking, I got to love it. Not only I got to love it, but then I chose to have a job where I help people to get better in people skills, as well as other skills that researchers need. So today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite areas, which is networking. I hope to hit the following learning objectives. We'll talk a little bit about what networking is and what networking is not. We'll go over the elements of strategic networking. I will outline a couple of challenges I see in my clients and throughout my work, and then give you a few practical tips. How does that sound as a plan? Okay, so let's start with discussing the benefits of networking. And the reason I really wanted to talk a little bit about this, because I have people who come to me and saying, Irina, I need to network. And my question is, why do you need network? And people say, well, because it's good for me, because somebody told me that I should be doing this. Well, my question is, what are the benefits? The benefits are vast. Networking helps you to find a place for idea exchange, where you can find new perspective. It opens the door to new collaborations, something that you haven't seen or done before. You're also honing your skills, not only people skills, but communication, because networking requires for you to clearly articulate who you are and what you would like from the person. At the end, it also offers you guidance. By connecting with people within your organizations, within your group, and across the universe, you can come across mentors and sponsors and advisors who would be absolutely foundational in your career success. So, what is networking and what is not networking. The way I look at it, there are two characteristics. First, it's the relationship and really the investment. Networking from the perspective of relationship, it's this activity or action when you connect with people to build meaningful relationship. It's not a transaction. It's not one-off where you meet somebody, ask them, and you go away. Because it's not a transaction, networking is indeed investment of your time. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes mindfulness. Therefore, if you're looking for instant reward, it's not going to be networking. What we can see, it's not transactional nature, and there's no instant gratification. It actually takes a lot of effort. But once the networking is done right, it really is about growth and opportunities. You cannot imagine how much you can uncover in connecting with people, exploring different perspectives, and just really being curious about what's out there. Networking done right is an incredible tool. However, it could be done wrong. What do I mean? Let me tell you a story about Jack. So Jack is a graduate student in the biomedical lab. He is fourth, fifth year, and he has published a couple of papers. He's about to get his PhD, and he wants to find career opportunities in, he's not sure where. Maybe he wants to do a postdoc, or maybe he wants to go and be an R&D scientist. His principal investigator, PI, suggests him to go to the conference, and Jack says, sure, I'll go. He goes to the conference. He talks to people, he has nice conversations at the dinner, networking dinner, where he sits next to some prominent scientists. He also talks to people as per his PI's recommendation. At the end, he has a bunch of business cards, but nothing that interesting, nothing that's helpful. He comes back to the lab and says, well, networking is just overrated. It was very draining and I didn't get anything out of it. Okay. Now let's look at Jill. Jill is the same graduate student. She's fourth, fifth student in the same lab, and they're going to the same conference. She's excited. So Jill loves science, but she loves to communicate about science even more. So she wants to have a career in scientific journalism. She doesn't have many people that she knows of in her network, so she's really hoping to get to know people who are in that industry. Before the conference, she actually checked out who is attending, and she did some homework, some research about people and their interest. So at the day of conference, she's ready. She's proactively seeking those people. She has engaged in conversation. When she shares what she likes, she tells them where she would like to go, and then she asks for more information and follow-up question. She's very enthusiastic. People who are talking with her are very impressed because she's this young woman who is passionate and she knows exactly what the future holds for her. They give her the information and she's excited. When she comes home, she has a bunch of business cards. And instead of putting them in her drawer, she adds them on LinkedIn, on ResearchGate, and she follows up. She engages with them, she asks questions, she maybe arranges some Zoom calls to talk more in depth about special projects. In about 6 months, now she has a mentor, and then there is a potential internship opportunities is lining up there. As you can imagine, Jill is happy. Networking did wonders for her. What was different between Jack and Jill? The same graduate students, the same networking opportunities. The outcome is vastly different. What was different? The difference was there was some intentionality and some sort of framework that Jill was using when she went to the conference. So what was that? To me, it's very simple. It consists of 3 steps where you identify what you have right now. Then you use this information to connect with people. And once you collect people through the connection, you engage with them, identify more potential contacts, and the circle goes on and on and on and on. Let's look at the first step. Identifying could be as simple as looking through your LinkedIn page, ResearchGate, or doing mapping. What you're looking here as my network mapping, at least my attempt to demonstrate to you how it's done. So here is me. And what I have a bunch of connections. I have strong connections and I have weak connections. The strong ones is somebody who I really know. That could be my friends from graduate schools or colleagues that I have projects with. The weak links is people who maybe I had coffee one time or a chit chat in the elevator. I'm also connected to organizations. In this case is International Coaching Federation that certified my coaching certificate. Through this organization, I am connected with a bunch of other people. At the same time, you can see everything is close by, but I also have this person. And sometimes we call them critical link. This is the person that's outside my regular network. It could be a family member, but the key is this person is not connected to my field or industry. So with creating those weak links and strong connections, I keep mapping it out to see what is that I have. As I map out, I start seeing, guess what, patterns. What are the patterns here? I have some sort of strong network connection to organizations, and then I start seeing their clusters of people or clusters of industries. In my case, there is higher education coaching, and this is where the niche I occupy. There's also a bunch of connection with National Institute of Health in the United States because I have a lot of friends who went working for it. I went to Society for Neuroscience conferences, and somehow I have people in dance and music. So what I've done, I've mapped it out. I really assessed, just like background literature when you're doing your research, what I have. Now, I need to figure out how good is my network. So I'm going to bring it here. Take 5 seconds. Is my network good? We can assess it by looking at the size, how many people, and I can tell you in my LinkedIn, I have about 2,000 people that are connected with me, and it's pretty engaging. How strong are it? What about those ties and weak links, and how diverse? Yes, I can say Irina's network is pretty good. Is it? What if I want to get a job in higher education doing some coaching? Absolutely. I can do it, no problem. But what if I want to work for NASA? What if I want to work for science journalism? My network is useless. This brings me to a very important component when you are doing networking. It's the purpose or the goal. And this is what makes strategic networking actually strategic. We're doing the activity with some goal in mind. What could be the goal of networking? For me, therefore, you're whether looking for information. For the researchers, it could be protocol, it could be experiments, it could be paper, resources, opportunities for collaboration, career advancement, partnership, and support, mentoring, advising. If you don't have these networking goals in mind, you're going to end up networking for the sake of networking. And guess who you're going to meet? You're going to meet people who are networking for the sake of networking. There's not going to be any idea exchange, any collaborations, because people are going to be good at networking. That's about it. And for me, it's like a dog chasing its tail. You can spend many hours doing this without any results. So let's look at what is this identifying your network steps are. As I mentioned first, figure out your networking goal. Without the goal, there will be no strategy. Map your existing connections using those weak links, critical links, strong ties. Assess it. I invite you to use the scale 1 to 10. It doesn't have to be like this. You can just look around and see, how good is my network? What is that I have? Identify gaps and opportunities. In my case, again, if my goal is to get the job at NASA or NSA for that matter, I don't have any connections, so I need to work really hard. But there might be some opportunities. Okay, you identify and mapped out your network. What do you do next? Next comes the hardest step, connecting with people who you do not know. And this step is full of uncertainty, unknown, and we as human beings don't want to feel that we do not know something because we prefer to be in control. So that's the most difficult. What do we do in this phase? First, we select key individuals for networking. Remember, we identify the gaps and we identify the opportunities. Sometimes I get the questions, Irina, I just did that and I have nobody. I have nobody in science journalism. I have nobody who works in the German company pharma. What do I do? I always tell them, you absolutely do have those people. You just need to ask more. Who do you ask? First, you ask those strong links, your friends, people you went to graduate school, family members. You can look through your school alumni. And then when you're asking, you're actually telling people what you're looking for. For example, you might have a huge family gathering and you say, hey, by the way, family, do you know anybody who is in Germany, works for X company? And chances are somebody knows somebody knows somebody. Don't disregard people who are close by. Once you select those key individuals, now you need to start thinking about compelling introduction. Unless somebody introduces you to another person, and even in this case, you still want to appear compelling and have a hook, meaning that you're going to get this person interested in listening to what you have to say. Compelling introductions are important. And compelling introductions follow the foundation of just communication. For the introduction, or let's say simple communication, you need to know your audience, your message, and yourself. What about the audience? It's very difficult to assess because on the other side, we have no idea who that person is. So what do? We want to use the skill called empathy. This is where we put ourselves in the shoe of that person and trying to guesstimate what would they like to hear from us, what would pique their interest, what would motivate them to respond. For example, if I want to reach out to a CEO of a startup and I have no connection to that person, what I'm going to do, I'm going to imagine the CEO sitting at the desk, maybe at 2 o'clock in the morning, working, being tired, and getting my message. What would CEO would like to see in their inbox? What would motivate them? Maybe they want to know about new technology and the graduate student is working for them. Maybe they want to know something that comes from academia, some sort of new research driven by the faculty who is looking for collaboration. Really feel what this person would feel, and then start crafting your message. With the message, we need to keep 2 things in mind. First is the message goal and the message content. What would be the goal? And we already started in the very beginning. Information, resources, support. But at the same time, the goal could be different. Think about what would you like your audience to know, feel, and do when they get your introduction. And I'm thinking about online, but when they get your introduction in person at the conference or at the workshop, what would you want them to know, feel, and do? Probably know something about yourself. What about the feel? What kind of emotions? probably not annoyance or anger of being interrupted. You want them to feel curious, intrigued, motivated to keep listening what you have to say. And of course, do whatever the ask is or request, whether it's let's hang out together, or I want to stay in touch, or I want to have coffee, or I want to have collaboration, or I want to pick your brain about this new experiment I'm doing. Once you have a clear idea, what is that you want them know, feel, and do, then you're moving to the content of the message. And there are different frameworks that will allow you to have those elevator pitches. Elevator pitch is pretty much a very brief introduction that you can anchor to when you are in a new situation. I'd like to introduce this one. It's called What? So what? Now what? What? This is where a person or you talk about your past and your background. Where did you come from? Where are your achievements? What did you study? Once you outline your past, your audience can place you in some sort of chronological and industry order. Then you say, so what? And so what is about what is significant about your work? And don't be shy. A lot of researchers will say, oh, there's nothing significant about what I do. Yes, there is. That's why you're a researcher. So what? What is the significant? What is cool about your research? What is cool about your situation? And once you nail it down, then now what? What are we going to do with this information? Where are you going next? And this framework nicely maps into past, present, and future, where you can talk about your past, you can communicate where you are now, and then where you're going next. So how does that look as an example? Well, for example, if you are at the networking dinner and you're sitting next to a prominent academic and you have about 30 seconds to introduce yourself, you can say, what? I recently completed my PhD in biochemistry, very specific, and you tell them that you focus on the role of enzymes in metabolic disease. That's enough. So what? What is this intriguing and significant thing about your work? Well, my research is crucial because it opens up potential new pathways in the treatment of diabetes and obesity. The prominent academic goes like, wow, this is really cool. And then you add, it can help with major public health concern. Now I'm listening because I might have a mom who suffers from diabetes. I might be interested in those crucial new pathways. And then once you have this hook and the person pays all the attention, you can say, well, and I'm looking to collaborate with clinical researchers to translate this finding potential therapeutic strategies. Boom. Now you have the request. You didn't directly ask the person what you want from them, but you're opening up this opportunity for them to say, wow, this is very interesting. I am a clinical researcher, or I might have the clinical researcher on my staff, and so on and so forth. How does that sound as a framework? If you decide to use it, a word of caution. What I see many times that people get stuck in what? This is your background. This is where researchers go on and on and on and on about their research and details in a very monotonous way. We don't want to do it. Where the majority of people want to be, they want to be awed. They want to be impressed. They want to just know what is really cool about this person and their work. Emphasis on so what, a little bit of what, and then very clear, now what? Okay, so now you got your audience. Now you have your message. You're very crystal clear. Why are we talking about the self? And what I mean by self, you really want this message to be authentic to you, really sits well with who you are, what your values are, and what your heart tells you. Why? Because if you have this rehearsed message, your introduction that you practice sounds really good, and then you drop it, and then you start talking about something else, there could be misalignment the way you speak, the way you act. And misalignment signals the other person who doesn't know you. What? It signals danger. At the same time, if the message is authentic, it fits you, you will feel comfortable, there will be less anxiety, and it comes across as sincere. Many people don't like networking because of this lack of sincerity. People feel like it's transactional, people looking for quick results, and it's not about relationship. If you have a message that's really nice, sincere, and genuine, you're more likely to build a rapport and trust. Okay, so now let's say you have your key individual, you have your compelling hooked introduction. Now you need to figure out those channels. How do you just deliver this message? And remember, this is not about the conversation. This is just initial connection. You can use diverse channels. What do I mean here? If it's online, right, you're reaching out the person by using social media, LinkedIn, ResearchGate, X platform, Instagram, emails, just to really get them interested. Or you are using in-person introduction or finding the spots where you can kind of connect. Once you have this established and then you have a person's attention, you're asking for a conversation. Or if it's in person, you are having a conversation. And this is really up to you to engage in a memorable chat with timely follow-up. Memorable is a very important word here because you don't want to come across as boring. Nobody wants to just talk to a very boring person about what. So how do you make a conversation memorable? First, relatable. To build the trust during the first encounter with a person, we really want to find this common ground or just be relatable. The way to be relatable is to ask open-ended questions and try to figure out what this person like and find those connections. Once you figure out the relatability, maybe your kids went to the same school, or maybe you like the same sports, and it's really small talk is playing an important role here. Then you're making the conversation clear and simple. Why do you want to make it clear and simple? Because a person doesn't know you. Remember, it's the first encounter. You're just connecting with this person for the conversation. What if their English is not the first language? And now you're using those complicated words trying to impress them. That doesn't feel good. Clarity and simplicity is always nice. And how do you make the conversation vivid? You tell a story. You tell a story about yourself, full of emotions. Maybe you can use analogies. Maybe you can use interesting examples. And then you show the genuine interest. If you have a memorable conversation with a follow-up within a week, and what I mean by follow-up is saying, great talking to you. I really enjoy our encounter. A person will remember. They will be in your now network. And maybe in future, you can reach out for information, resources, connections, and opportunities. Boom, connection is done. So now we moved from the identifying step to connection to the last one, which is engaging. And engaging is typically gets overlooked because people feel like they've done their work. Now they have 10 new people in their professional network. Now they're done. Maybe in future, they can ask them a question, but it's not that simple. Engaging is incredibly important step because it makes you relevant, it makes you visible, it makes you important. How do you stay relevant, important, and visible through engagement? So you communicate and stay in touch. And sometimes it's very difficult, especially if you have large network. So as I said, in my LinkedIn network, which sometimes gets engaging, it's about 2,000 people. I can't, and maybe 1,000 people that I kind of know, maybe 500 I have interacted at any point of another. It's difficult. It's really difficult to communicate regularly. So what I do, I share posts, I share information. And how do I stay in touch? Sometimes I have a thought about this person. So I go and I just send them a message saying, well, I was thinking about you the other day. I hope all is well. That is in. This is your personal touch. If you don't want to do this, you can just seek opportunities to collaborate. Or you can offer support, assistance, and resources. How does that look like? You're not just going to show up out of the blue saying, hey, can I help you with something? But at the same time, if you come across an interesting article or you come across of a piece of advice, you can always just reach out to this person, send a message and saying, listen, I came across this piece of ... Would you be interested in it? Or I think it would be helpful for your team. And last but not least, show genuine interest in people's work and achievements. And you know what? And I don't do this enough. And what I mean here is I come across publications by my friends or people who I know or I've met at one point or the other, and I say, oh, okay, nicely done. But I don't take this extra step, sending them a message and saying, I just read your article, fantastic job. Or I've heard you got a job in X university or in X company, congratulations. But just think about this. If you are home and all of a sudden you got a message from somebody you haven't seen for 5 years, and it's very positive, right? It's just telling you, nicely done. That feels really good. All of a sudden, this person is back and you are considering them. You're thinking about them. Versus if this person reaches out saying, hey, Irina, I haven't seen you for about 5 years. Do you have a job for me? That's transaction. That doesn't sit well with me. So just make sure when you're building your network, when you're building your professional relationship, you're not overlooking this engage in your network step. It sounds easy, isn't it? Identify, connect, engage. But it's not. That's why monthly, not daily now, since I have my own business, I have people who come to me with the networking challenges. They know they should be networking, yet they find it very difficult. They don't want to do it. They have resistance and reluctance. So I collected a bunch of networking challenges, and I'd like to share 4 with you. The first one is, it's really hard to build a professional network from scratch, especially if you're starting out. Not only is early career researcher, let's say a PhD student or a master's student, but sometimes it could be difficult when you are late stage in your career or mid stage of your career, when you're switching the fields or you're switching disciplines, or you just haven't done those activities. You're going to look at your screen, your computer screen, and just see no connection in any social, professional networking media. It's discouraging. But it's just like growing a tree or a plant if its tree is too big. You seed it and you water it and you watch it grow, one step at a time. You water it and you watch it grow, one step at a time. What I mean here, it takes time to create this network. Remember, it's about relationship and it's about investment. When you grow a tree, you're not going to go and just like check every day what's on the calendar, how much your tree has grown, unless you're doing research on the tree growth. So I can give you an example. For me, when I started my LinkedIn endeavor, my LinkedIn profile back in 2014, I had 0 people. It took me forever to get to 30, to get to 50. But once I got to 700, things were easier. The more I was posting and engaging with people, the bigger my network became. The same is as I was involved in coaching, I reached out to the societies, I volunteered, I participated, and I grew my network one person at a time. The second challenge is this limited access to networking opportunities. I've ran the workshops on networking multiple times, and I always have this question: what are the opportunities for networking? And without any doubt, number 1 is conferences, as if you have to wait for about a year to go and find people to connect. But that's not true. Opportunities are everywhere. It's the lab meeting, professional career development workshops, online gatherings, coffee shop around your research institute. Elevators. Elevator pitches have a name for a reason, because when you're in the elevator, there is nothing else to do other than to talk about your research or the weather. Networking opportunities are everywhere if you're willing to see them, if you are proactive about them. The next one is cultural and communication differences. Since now, as I mentioned, my mission is to really help new generation of researchers to have good cross-cultural communication skills. I find it's hard because when we start building global collaborations or global networks, we come to this notion. Traditions and business etiquettes are different. For example, in Japan, in academia or not, you use business card to introduce yourself, meishi. And I can tell you, when first I came to Japan, I just didn't know what to do with this. I would just put them on my back pocket of my jeans, to the horror of everybody around me. So if you're doing something across the borders, just make sure you understand the traditions and etiquette. And if you're networking in person, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. The first one is the space, the personal space, because we're people, and especially after pandemic, now we're back into offices, into the in-person conferences, and sometimes it's difficult to gauge what's okay, what's not okay in terms of space. What you're looking at the picture is the intimate or personal space for different cultures. So if you're coming from a country where there's a lot of people and just people tend to grow together and work together for the lack of space, you might find a person from that culture staying a bit too closer to you. If there's a person, I think a good example would be Northern Europe, the personal space, it's a bit bigger. So just now think about how it would affect your networking, right? You're just trying to, or post a presentation, you're there surrounded by people, somebody standing close, somebody staying far away, you may or may not feel comfortable about this arrangement, but that gives you an opportunity to get curious and just really be aware that people are different. The same goes with body gestures. I love moving my hands, but when I network, I have to be very aware what my hands and what my body is doing, because some of the gestures that are not offensive to me might be offensive to somebody else. So that's about that's about the posture, that's about your body in space. But what about the language? A couple of things I want to highlight here, because we're talking about, right, introduction, written, everybody can read, but what if you have a conversation? There are different cultural differences when it comes to communication. The one is direct and low context, and indirect and high context. And this was my first year in Japan. When I come, I after 17 years lived in the United States, I really absorbed this direct, low context culture. What it means is like, you say what you mean, very directive, and there's nothing behind the curtains. That would be the American culture. And then I moved to Japan, where the communication is very indirect with high context. And what it is just things are kind of in the air. You just get a lot of information from outside. A lot of things are not spoken. And you can imagine, whether you're communicating, you're collaborating, or you're working cross-culturally, that could be a lot of confusion, especially if you're coming from direct and low context culture and you prepared your elevator speech, you prepare your introduction, you're very direct, and then you have the person on the other side is keeping awkward silence. That's strange. That's not what you practice for. But the silence is not awkward. It's just a very different way to communicating, because in some cultures, people would respectfully give you time instead of jumping in and telling you their feedback. So what I want to introduce here is the concept of conversational patterns. Typically, in Anglo-American conversation patterns is people take turns. The conversation follows. Somebody says something, another person responds. It's just turn taking. If you are growing up around this is what you absorb. But there's some cultures, and Japan would be a prime example, when there's turn-taking intertwined with really long pauses of silence. Awkward silence, not awkward. It's part of the conversation. So now think about these two persons are trying to connect at the conference. These two people are trying to connect at the coffee shop. That could be just a lot of uncomfortable feelings because one doesn't know what to do with the silence and the other doesn't know how to jump in the conversation. Until they meet a person with Latin American conversation patterns that just doesn't even take turns. And this is me. So if I talk freely, if I'm allowed to talk freely and I'm allowed to talk fast, I will jump in the conversation, interrupt without thinking this is rude. Why am I telling you about those conversational patterns? Just think about when people come together, they will have different ways of communicating. And sometimes it could be scary, sometimes it could be uncomfortable, sometimes it could be confusing. So just keeping this in mind and being aware that it's not you, it's not them, it's just the differences could be quite relieving. So what's the last challenge that I want to mention here? And for me, this is the hardest and the biggest. It's lack of self-confidence and some imposter fears or imposter syndrome. And the reason it is difficult, because before we were talking about starting from the scratch, or there's cross-cultural differences in communication and networking, and also lack of opportunities. Those are external obstacles. Those are something that you can pretty much do about, and you're aware of them. But lack of self-confidence and imposter syndrome, it's often not there. You feel like there's something that prevents you from networking or connecting with people, building relationship, asking for a question, but you're not sure what it is. As a result, my clients come to me and say, Irina, I just don't like networking. I don't feel comfortable and I just don't want to do it ever again. And the way it comes out is people have different excuses why they're not engaging in those beneficial activities, such as, I'm just another social person. I don't have time for networking. I always say wrong things. I don't need networking for my career. I'm too shy. I have nothing interesting to say. I'm an introvert. Nobody cares. I hear it a lot. Like, why would people care? I'm just starting up. Or I don't speak English, said a person who is communicating with me in English. What are these? What are those phrases? They're thoughts. This is a product of mental chatter. It's a side effect of our brain. These are the stories we have been telling ourselves for ages. And not only we tell the stories, we actually believe in them. As a result, they become our realities that prevent us from doing things. These are real thoughts, but the good news here, they're not true. They're just the stories that your mind making it up to protect you from being uncomfortable, to keep you in a safe comfort zone. So if these are the stories your mind making up, we can do something about this. And there's something about this called cognitive reappraisal or reframing. We're in control of our thinking, and we can create a different story and a different reality. So how does it look in the networking when you just don't want to network because of all this mental chatter? Well, I invite you to imagine something. Imagine you are in Tokyo and you live in Tokyo. You feel very comfortable there. You see a person who is lost, and they come to you and they ask for direction. Just simple direction. Just show me where X is. What would you do? Would you turn them away, or would you try to help them out if you speak the language or you know the area? Chances are the majority of us humans would help this person out. And this is what networking is. Networking is asking somebody who knows the area, who knows the project, who knows the field, who knows the discipline, who knows the job, asking them for direction because you're lost and you're new. And if you're coming with a positive intention, chances are, as you helped this person, another person will help you out too. As long as you're staying curious and open-minded, networking is not a big deal. Another component of the mindset here is being proactive. Being proactive, just like that lady, graduate student, Jill, is incredibly important. And proactivity has a strong connection with confidence, which is, in a nutshell, practice over time. Networking is a skill. We're just really talking about acquiring the skill and having confidence to do it. And I can tell you, you have confidence in walking and talking. But at one point, when you were a baby, you didn't know how to walk. You didn't know how to talk. How did you get there? So now that you walk and talking without thinking, you have practiced every single day, multiple times a day until you got it. So the same as networking. It's just a skill, and practicing it daily or weekly over time will yield the result of confidence, where you'll be able to reach out to anybody, ask any question, ask for direction, and build beautiful, meaningful relationship to help you with careers and professional life. So with this, we have talked a little bit about a lot. So we've talked about what networking is and what networking is not. I highlighted the elements of strategic networking, which were identify, connect, and engage, and also just, went over a couple of challenges for and some practical tips. Finishing with this, just networking. There's nothing special about this. Just like walking, talking as a skill, and everybody is capable of doing this as long as you practice, as long as you're intentional. I hope you'll come up with an action item that you can do between now and next time I see you somewhere in the universe, that you can incorporate one tip or one suggestion to start building your ideal professional net. With this, once again, I'd like to thank you for listening to 45-minute presentation, and special gratitude to, again, Japanese Science and Technology Agency for having me here. It was such a great pleasure. If at any point you'd like to connect with me, please go on LinkedIn. This is the only social media outlet I have. Find Irina Filonova, PhD, or just check my company, the PhD Whisper, and just see what I've been up to for the last 2.5 years. With this, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to see you at any other webinars or workshops that the PhD Whisper or JST offer. Thank you.